An incredible night is something almost no one knows how to define. Have you ever stopped to think about it? When someone hears, have an incredible night, it seems confusion arises. We are not accustomed to thinking outside the obvious. We're programmed to respond to what we already know. Imagine approaching a fast food attendant and saying something like, make this an extraordinary night. You would notice their surprise because it's something out of the ordinary. Now, let's talk about identity. A profound topic that we often think we understand but is, in reality, surrounded by doubts and confusion. The first essential point is to stop accepting lies about yourself, about God, or about your purpose here. It is crucial to grasp this. There are forces trying to confuse and distance you from what truly matters. A curious example is the age of the Earth. A century ago, scientists claimed our planet was 100,000 years old. Then they started talking about millions, and now billions of years. Why this constant change? When you don't know your origin or who created you, it becomes easier to be manipulated, lost in confusion about your own existence. Another point is the idea that we came from monkeys. Many believe this because of concepts like the opposable thumb. What? But if we were merely cousins of monkeys, how can we explain the unique abilities of the human brain? There is something called the brain window, which states that if a child doesn't learn to speak by age 7, they will never develop that ability. Monkeys have never spoken, so how did the first humans speak? This mystery highlights the need for something greater in our creation. Additionally, there is a historical effort to deconstruct beauty, which reflects the glory of God. Art, for example, shifted from works that exalted beauty to abstract forms that confuse and disorient. Cultural movements have also sought to weaken the family, a vital foundation. Since the 1920s, strategies have been created to divide people within their home, distancing them from each other and from God. Identity goes beyond the functions or roles we perform. You may be a business person, investor, singer, pastor, but these are merely functions. Your identity is something much greater. It is being the image and likeness of the Creator. Purpose and calling are not the same thing. Purpose reflects God through you, while calling is a specific mission to fulfill on earth. Finally, I want to leave a reflection. Many do not prosper financially because they fail to see their true identity. This benefits those who control the majority, while you limit yourself by not believing in your potential. Discovering who you truly are can be transformative. After all, you were not created to be limited, but to govern. I have always believed that truth goes beyond human impositions and doesn't change with trends. As a child in 5th grade, I declared that my origin was Adam, while many insisted on the theory of evolution. I said, if you want to believe you came from a monkey, that's your choice, but I choose something greater. This belief followed me for a long time, but brought clarity. Later, I discovered that even koalas have opposable thumbs, which made me reflect. Some people live as if they were descendants of monkeys, others as children of koalas, and some understand their identity as the image and likeness of the Creator. This understanding is liberating. Those who understand their identity know they were created to govern and transform. They are not bound by functions or labels. Identity goes beyond what we do. It's who we are at our core. God made us free, and freedom is the remedy for humanity. Truth does not need to be defended. God did not call us to be lawyers, but ambassadors. He is the absolute truth, and it does not depend on our actions to exist. Often, well-intentioned people waste energy defending things that don't need defense, forgetting to exercise the true purpose, to govern and bear fruit. Once, I witnessed a debate between religious leaders who disagreed on the best approach to the gospel. In that moment, I realized that wasting energy attacking or defending opinions is a waste. Our focus should be on transforming lives and advancing the divine purpose. I have seen pastors exclude colleagues who fell into sin, while the true example of Christ would be to restore them with love and mercy. At a finance seminar, I heard various perspectives. Some said wealth comes with effort and time, others that it is instantaneous, and some that the best approach is to give everything to the poor. In the end, I realized that the truth lies in the result. What you choose to believe shapes your reality. If you follow solid principles, the fruits will come. The biggest barrier for many is emotional blockages and the need for approval. When you understand your identity, these blockages become stepping stones. The fear of failing publicly, for example, is not a fear of speaking but a fear of not being accepted. This relentless pursuit of validation paralyzes us. However, those who live by principles transcend these limitations. Principles are immutable foundations established since creation. Rules, on the other hand, are human creation, subject to change and interpretation. When you live based on principles, your freedom is evident. Free people with revealed identity are the solution for the world. During a remarkable experience on the Sea of Galilee, I asked God for a clear revelation. He showed me that to live fully, it is necessary to understand the 7 layers of identity. Many go through life without even exploring these layers, living only on the surface, trapped by limiting beliefs or fragile conviction. But those who reach the level of fact, where purpose is already clear, experience true transformation. Active identity clarifies purpose. When you understand who you truly are, your actions are no longer reactive but intentional. This goes beyond beliefs and conviction. It is living in the certainty that you were created with a specific and powerful purpose. What defines the most successful people in the world? Many have never set foot in a church, tithed, or given offering. So why do they prosper so much? The answer lies in principle. Universal principles, like sowing and reaping, have been embedded in creation since the beginning. Solomon said, "The generous soul will prosper." And this is an immutable truth, regardless of religion or belief. Within churches, there is a reluctance to speak openly about this. Many struggle to give 10%. But the true understanding is that when you live aligned with generosity and divine principle, you go far beyond the tithe. The problem lies in identity. When you don't understand who you are, you live in scarcity and consequently judge others. I've often thought, where does my tithe go? Is the pastor using the money well? This thought reflects someone who has yet to understand the purpose behind giving. Identity clarifies purpose. God designed each of us uniquely. We are not rare. We are unique. This divine design connects us directly to His image and likeness. And here's an important detail. There are no ugly people. What you perceive as ugliness may simply be a disconnection between the interior and the exterior, or a matter of personal taste. How can we call someone, created in the Creator's image, ugly? God's original design is perfect. He does not live by beliefs or convictions, but by certainties, and that is what we need to learn. Beliefs, whether positive or negative, are still limiting. Those who live only by belief remain testing and doubting. Certainty brings a different posture. When you are certain, you give everything without fear. This is living by revealed faith, not blind faith. For example, we often confuse our relationship with God with incessant requests, as if we were begging for something that has already been given to us. Imagine a 10-year-old child still asking their father for permission to eat at home. The father has already given everything: the house, the food, the access. So it is with God. He has already given us the governance of the earth. As Psalm 115:16 says, "The heavens belong to the Lord, but the earth He has given to the children of men." The question is, are you living as someone who governs, or do you still act like someone who needs permission to prosper? The heavens are structured in layers. The first heaven is what we see. The second is the realm of powers, and the third is God's throne. Prayer pierces through these layers like incense, reaching the throne. And when God responds, the answer descends to the earth. Now there is something that blocks our prayers and requests: a lack of alignment with principle. In programming, there is a command that, when written incorrectly, crashes the entire system. The same is true in spiritual life. When we are misaligned, we block the blessings already available to us. I will end this reflection with an essential point. Live your identity. Stop acting like someone trapped in limiting belief systems and start exercising the purpose for which you were created. Understanding your identity is the key that unlocks your fullness. Use it to advance, bear fruit, and govern. During Jesus' temptation, the devil always began his provocations with "if." He used this to sow doubt, but Jesus never yielded. He knew who he was and didn't need to prove anything. The revelation of identity eliminates the "if." It's not about condition, it's about convictions. When you have clarity about your identity, it's already settled. Reflect on what is written in Psalm 115:16. "The heavens are the heavens of the Lord, but the earth He has given to the children of men." God entrusted the earth to us to govern. There is no ambiguity in that. He trusted us, period. The question is, are you living as a ruler or as a consumer? Most people limit themselves to consuming and fail to realize they were called to create, transform, and lead. Work, which should have been a delight in Eden, became a punishment after humanity's fall. Genesis 3:22 makes it clear, "You will eat by the sweat of your brow." That was not the original plan. God created us to live in harmony and enjoy creation, but sin brought effort and struggle. Even so, He did not change the essence of who we are, His image and likeness, with a clear purpose to govern. When God created everything, He did so with certainty and perfection. He placed us last in creation, not because we are less important, but because everything was already prepared for our arrival. He is sovereign, yet He gave us the freedom to decide. This freedom is the key to governance, but also the root of many of our problems. Instead of fulfilling our role, we often become trapped by the opinions of others, which are like disposable goods with no commitment to results. God is not directly controlling every detail of your life. While He is sovereign, He gave us authority. If He were controlling everything, your home would be perfect, your relationships unshakable, and there would be no conflict. He entrusted you with the responsibility to govern your own life within the principles He established. Now, let's talk about identity. It is unique to each person. Jesus never healed anyone the same way twice. He treated each person individually. This shows that our relationship with God is not standardized. He respects our individuality and calls us to do the same with others. Diversity is part of creation, and each person reflects a different facet of the Creator. This diversity also includes the energy we carry. God breathed life into Adam, a vital energy connecting the spiritual and the physical. When you live out of alignment with your identity, it affects the energy you transmit. Some people enter a room and drain energy instead of bringing fruitfulness. It's easy to recognize those who live this way, always tired, discouraged, or causing conflict. Personally, I love when someone envies. Do you know why? Because it shows I'm making progress. Envy is an acknowledgement that you're doing something right. Those who have clarity about their identity don't waste time on comparison. Envy is the reflection of someone who lacks results, and instead of working to improve, spends their energy on others. Those with purpose know growth is a personal journey and don't need to compare themselves. The key is clarity of identity. When you know who you are, you enter any place with confidence, knowing what to do and how to act. You don't seek external approval because you already have internal conviction. This makes your life an expression of the governance God entrusted to you. Self-image is deeply connected to what we hear and believe about ourselves. From a young age, we absorb the words of authority from parents, teachers, leaders, and often carry these beliefs throughout our lives. If someone told you that you were incapable or wouldn't succeed, you might still be living under that shadow. But God has a completely different perspective on who you are. In Genesis 1:26, it's clear. We were created in God's image and likeness, with the authority to govern over all creation. This includes dominion over what others try to impose on you. Yet, we often lower our head, accept these lies, and live far below our calling. The first layer of identity is the original design. God created us perfect, but society shapes us to conform. The second layer is self-image, built on what we hear and believe. And often, this image is misaligned with what God says. Honoring your father and mother, for example, doesn't mean living according to their desires or fears, but respecting them while walking in the purpose God has for you. Leaders or figures who demand honor without deserving it misunderstand the true meaning of the word. The third layer is self-knowledge, which leads us to the concept of lech lecha, Hebrew for go to yourself. This call God made to Abraham wasn't just physical. It was a call to leave his comfort zone, abandon voices that didn't believe in him, and discover his true essence. Jesus also went through this. Before starting his ministry, he was baptized by John the Baptist, even though he was without sin. Why? To fulfill all righteousness. What happened next? He heard the Father's voice saying, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." This declaration gave Jesus the strength to face the desert. Here's a powerful code. Without knowing who you are, without hearing that you are loved and chosen, the desert can destroy you. Jesus came out strengthened because he was certain of his identity. Now, let me ask a quick question. How many of you have clearly heard this phrase from God in your life? Perhaps you haven't heard it because you haven't fully understood your identity. Here's the secret. Before crossing the desert, you need to know who you are and who is with you. God didn't call us to live bound by opinion, emotional blockages, or self-imposed limitation. He called us to govern, to be the expression of His glory on earth. When you understand this, there is no room for envy, comparison, or doubt. Your identity is unique, your mission is specific, and your journey is non-negotiable. Perfect love casts out all fear. Yet many still live in fear because they haven't understood what perfect love is. Let me ask, what is perfect love? Many will quickly answer, it's Jesus. But is that all? No. Perfect love begins with understanding who you are in God and the ability to love yourself. This is clear when the commandment says, love your neighbor as yourself. If you don't love yourself, how can you love your neighbor? Here's a legal principle to illustrate. Imagine someone steals something from you and you write a petition without specifying the legal clause that was violated. The judge, even with all the evidence, will dismiss the case because you didn't use the right clause. The same applies to the Bible. It's a book of legal clauses. Genesis 1:26, for example, is a clause that defines who you are, created in God's image and likeness, called to govern. Yet, we often live ignoring this, letting lies limit us. When I talk about self-image, I'm referring to how you see yourself in relation to what God has already declared about you. God says, "Be strong and courageous, for I am with you." Yet many believe more in words of fear and condemnation they've heard throughout their lives. If someone says there's something negative in your house, like a curse, you immediately believe it. But if I say your house is filled with blessing, you doubt it. This shows how your self-image is misaligned with what God has already declared. Let's touch on a delicate point. Abraham. Many call him the father of faith, but overlook his mistakes. Out of fear, Abraham gave his wife to Pharaoh and later to Abimelech, accepting dowries in exchange. He acted cowardly and didn't repent immediately. This shows that even the greatest heroes of faith had human flaws. These mistakes had profound consequences. Abraham's decision to accept Hagar, the Egyptian princess, as part of the dowry led to Ishmael, who became the father of a great nation. Today, 1.8 billion descendants of Ishmael exist, and many conflicts in the Middle East trace back to this decision. This isn't about demonizing anyone, but recognizing that Abraham's choices impacted generations. Yet God's sovereignty fulfilled His promise, making Abraham the father of many nations. The lesson is clear. Don't skip steps. Abraham waited 25 years for Isaac, the child of the promise. David knew he would be king, but waited decades to receive the crown. When we try to force timing, we create more problems than solutions. The principle of lech lecha, go to yourself, teaches that progress begins with self-knowledge. Only when you understand who you are and act based on that revelation can you advance. In the first layer, the design, you only need to accept. God has already crafted your life with purpose. In the second layer, self-image, it's necessary to reframe negative experiences and align your vision with God. In the third layer, self-knowledge, it's time to act. You can't stay where you are. You need to step out of your comfort zone and move toward your purpose. Now, reflect. Are you willing to move forward, or will you remain stuck in the limitations others have placed on you? The choice is yours. But remember, God has already done His part. It's up to you to accept, reframe, and act. Life change begins with movement, not just thought. Your body reacts before your mind processes decision. When you're stagnant, like in a financial fetal position, saying you'll change but not acting, nothing changes. The brain needs movement to create new connections and break cycles of negative, conditioned thoughts. Here's a code. No thought changes movement. Movement changes thought. You don't need to feel to act, but act to start feeling. This is a principle of the brain and body. An example is the unconscious pendulum of the body. When you talk to someone and they slightly lean back, even if they're smiling, the body is saying, "I'm hesitant." You need to learn to read these messages to align body and mind. The fourth layer is decision-making. It doesn't require extreme intelligence, but action without confusion or living bound by condition. Living by conditions means always looking to the past or past experience, judging everything based on. Making decisions, on the other hand, is opening yourself to the new, to experiences yet to be lived. The visual cortex, for example, always tries to compare the present to the past, judging music, people, or environments based on what you already know. This is limiting. True freedom is letting people, situations, and even yourself be at peace. It's the principle of not imposing your judgments on the world around you. The fifth layer is the governance of the soul. The body is just a tool. It reacts to the command of the soul, which must govern it. When your soul is at peace, it governs the body. When it's confused, the body takes control, creating chaos and anxiety. The soul must be governed by spiritual consciousness, the sixth layer, where the relationship with the Creator and purpose reside. The purpose always begins and ends in the same place, God. Everything He created has a natural cycle and return. The artificial world attempts to replicate, but it fails. There is no perfection in the artificial world. Even digital, straight lines are composed of microcurves. This proves that what God created is incomparable. Here's the secret. The spirit is the road, the soul is the driver, and the body is the vehicle. If you are on the wrong road, living outside of your purpose, no amount of effort will correct your direction. Even the devil can enter worship services and use the Bible as an instrument to deceive, but he can never replicate the essence of God's purpose for you. Knowing this is crucial to avoiding spiritual confusion. In the seventh layer lies the overflow. The overflow is the final stage of alignment between spirit, soul, and body. When you live in your purpose, you don't need to strive for results. They come naturally. This is where you find rest because you are aligned with God's will. This rest is not passivity, but absolute trust. Family is deeply connected to these layers. Many people confuse sacrifice with purpose, giving up basic needs to serve others, but neglecting their home, spouse, and children. The result? Fragmented families where respect and admiration are lost. The foundation of identity begins in the family. What is family? Family is patriarchy, assets, and purpose. God created this structure, and it only works when lived in its fullness. Humans can create systems and redefine concepts, but what God established as the foundation, the relationship between husband, wife, and children, is non-negotiable. Nothing God created goes out of style. Rest, patriarchy, family, these are eternal because they are part of the original design. Human trends, rules, and systems are transient. They change with every generation, but what comes from God remains. The overflow, for example, is not optional. If you're not overflowing into others' lives, you are failing in God's purpose. Here's a hard truth. If you are silent, inactive, or living in scarcity, you are being a liability to the earth. Some of you live in a blessed country, but carry wrong mindsets that burden the place where you reside. If the entire earth adopted the American lifestyle, we would need 5 more planets to sustain the demand. What does this mean? It means that identity is not about imitating models of human prosperity or success, but about understanding what God uniquely called you to do. Now, about parents and inherited beliefs. It is important to maintain principles your parents taught, such as integrity, respect, and faith, but leave limiting rules and beliefs in their home. Honor them, but don't carry weights that aren't yours. Don't fight your parents. Respect them, but understand that moving forward requires discovering who you are, and that only happens through self-knowledge. Here's a quick review. You are stuck in a phase of your life because you haven't understood what needs to be abandoned or redefined. Many live with beliefs that paralyze them. For example, waking up early is a popular belief about success. Yes, it can be useful, but it is not a universal rule. I know priests who wake up at 3 a.m. every day but live in scarcity. It's not the time that defines the result. It's the action aligned with purpose. Studying at Harvard, for instance, can be transformative for some, but only if you know how to take advantage of the environment and connection. The example of Jorge Paulo Lemann, one of the richest men in Brazil, illustrates this. He was almost expelled from Harvard, but corrected his behavior, and today he is recognized for his ability to create powerful connections. However, merely attending Harvard guarantees nothing. The belief that the place alone transforms lives is limited. Now about prayer. Many of you speak to God, but do not listen. True prayer is not just asking, it is listening. God already knows what you need before you ask, but you don't know what He wants to say. Stop just talking. Practice silence and listen. Imagine you're on a call with God. You start the conversation, but hang up before hearing the response. This is like using an old phone card and never waiting for the full connection. The true secret of prayer is to hear what God has to say. Here's a practical task. Genesis 1:26. Read this verse until it sinks into your soul. Accept that you are made in God's image and likeness. Then redefine your experience. If you grew up believing that wealth is selfishness, spend time with generous people who have resources. If you always saw conflict in family, seek examples of families aligned with God's purpose. Finally, self-knowledge requires action. You will need to leave your comfort zone. You will need to face conflict. Nothing is resolved without movement. Purpose is activated through growth in your identity. It's no use taking a vocational test or following imposed standards. Your identity is not in what you do, but in who you are. Now, reflect. Are you willing to leave your current place, face the necessary conflict, and grow in your identity? This is the only way to achieve true rest and overflow into others. Dichotomy, or binary thinking, is a conditioning that makes us believe we must always choose between right or wrong, left or right. This prevents us from creating new paths and keeps us paralyzed when making decisions. The true answer, in many situations, is to create something different. It's not about which direction to take, but about breaking stagnation and acting. Self-knowledge, or lech lecha, is a process of going inward to discover who you are in God and in the purpose He has for your life. This requires action. It's no use being stuck, thinking about all the possibilities without making decisions. Those who seek external answers for everything remain trapped in paralysis. Transformation happens when you stop waiting for the perfect choice and start acting with what you already know. Let me give you a practical example. Making mistakes is not the problem. The problem is the fear of making mistakes that keeps you from moving. Full identity doesn't come from the absence of mistakes, but from the ability to learn from them. If you don't make decisions and act, you will remain in the same place while God calls you to advance. And about questions, here's a code. Questions are never foolish, but those who don't ask questions may remain ignorant. Don't be afraid to ask, because questions reveal the level of maturity and desire to grow. However, the best questions are those that apply to your life. Asking for the sake of asking is not the goal. Ask to understand, act, and transform. Returning to the central point, movement transforms more than thought. Don't stay stuck waiting for total clarity to begin. Make decisions, even small ones, and trust that God will adjust your steps along the way. He doesn't need you to have all the answers before starting. He needs you to trust and move. In conclusion, remember, your identity is not in your functions or others' expectations. You are the image and likeness of God, created to govern, produce, and overflow into others' lives. It's time to break free from paralysis and start living this fully. True love is when you feel loved by God. It's not just knowing that Jesus is present, but experiencing being completely loved by Him. Many people have Jesus in their lives, but don't experience this love fully because they haven't truly opened themselves to receive it. Loving others is a consequence, but the starting point is allowing yourself to be loved by Him. When you understand and accept this love, it casts out all fear. Fear is not overcome by human effort or positive thoughts, but by the security of knowing you are unconditionally loved. This is the central point, receiving God's love in such a way that it overflows and transforms. Now, about people who cut ties or reject you, don't worry. When you start to overflow, often the people around you aren't ready to receive or understand. This doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're advancing in something others may not yet grasp. True friends don't leave, they remain. And here's an essential point about value and price. People have value, not price. Value lies in the essence of who you are and what you carry. When you live aligned with your purpose, the fruit of that manifests naturally as wealth. Wealth, in this sense, isn't just financial. It's the result of growth, wisdom, and overflow. It's fruit, not effort. Returning to the theme of layers, transitioning between them is a continuous and interconnected process. You can't skip stages without consequences. For example, the fifth layer can only be unlocked if the first is solidified. Everything begins with accepting who you are, the image and likeness of God. When you accept this, you can move forward, but the path must be consistent. The secret is understanding that each layer builds the foundation for the next. When you grasp this, there is no more paralysis because each step is clear. As mentioned earlier, the greatest obstacle in people's lives is not a lack of faith, but the fear of making decisions and failing. However, mistakes are part of growth. Those who don't make mistakes don't advance. David is a perfect example. He made many mistakes, but always learned from them. He didn't repeat the same failures, and for that reason was called a man after God's own heart. It wasn't because he was perfect, but because he had a heart willing to change, correct, and move forward. Finally, about attracting good or bad thing, it's not just about positivity, but about action. Actions generate results. A negative person who acts with determination can achieve better results than a positive person who does nothing. Movement is essential. It is action aligned with faith that transforms. In conclusion, wealth and fruit come from alignment with your purpose and the overflow of that purpose into others' lives. True love casts out fear, because when you understand you are loved by God, nothing can paralyze you. You are not bound by others' opinions or your limitation. You are free to live fully as His image and likeness. Allow yourself to visualize this new phase that God is unlocking in your life. You are the image and likeness of the Creator, and He has already placed within you everything necessary to move forward. It's not the place where you are that defines your prosperity, but who you carry in your essence. God hasn't called you to live limited by circumstances or others' opinion. He has called you to be an agent of transformation wherever you are. Everything that has been blocked by wrong beliefs, fears, or even religiosity is being unlocked now, in Jesus' name. If there is shame, it is being replaced by boldness. If there is doubt, it is giving way to certainty. You were made to overflow. And this overflow is not just for you, but to impact the lives around you, your family, friends, and community. Remember, you are more prosperous than any place or system because you were made by God's hand. It doesn't matter what country you're in or the conditions around you. What matters is the seed He planted in you. And as mentioned before, if you want to know how many oranges can grow from a seed, plant it. The same principle applies to your life. Everything God has placed in you was made to bear fruit, multiply, and impact generations. Now declare in your heart, I accept this new phase, and as you accept it, commit to act. The greatest barrier to purpose is not a lack of knowledge or resources, but inertia. Move. Take steps of faith, even small ones. What matters is not the speed, but the direction. God is releasing supernatural acceleration over this new decade. Everything that was lost, withheld, or stolen will be restored in a measure that goes beyond the natural. Prepare to see results that can't be explained by human means, but carry the mark of God's work. Now, you are not the same. Something has been unlocked within you. What seemed impossible yesterday is no longer so. What was blocked has been removed, and now it's time to walk toward what God has for you. With every decision, remember, you do not walk alone. The Creator is with you, guiding your steps and aligning your purpose. Go and overflow.